This is Akashvani. On the topic Vignettes of Living Heritage, the participants in the interview, historian and columnist Dr. V.Sriram is being interviewed by Shri AMRITH BHARGAV.
Our guest today is Mr. V.Sriram, an entrepreneur and historian whose writings have singularly enriched the socio-cultural ethos of Chennai, that is Madras. Schooled in Madras and Calcutta, he secured his degree in engineering from the Delhi University in 1987 and also completed his master's degree in business administration from the same institution. Having successfully run a business in industrial hydraulics and software over the last 3 decades, Mr. V. Sriram's books, talks and walks centered on history, heritage and Carnatic music have captivated the minds and hearts of many. A much sought-after corporate biographer, his writings on the evolution of businesses and their contextual contribution have mapped him in a niche of unique authors. His 2021 book Chennai, a biography, revitalized the arteries and veins of interest in a city that is as varied and diverse as Chennai. On behalf of All India Radio, it is a pleasure to host him for the English program at our studios today.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and I am very happy to be here to share my experiences.
Before we get into the subject, I would like to get a bit biographical. Could you please tell us of your foray into heritage, particularly your involvement with the fascinating stories of old Madras?
See, it all started, I think, everything really starts with where you are born, what is your family environment. So when I was very young, all I can remember is that my grandparents and all my aunts and uncles, we grew up in a very cultural atmosphere. Grandfather was very involved in Sanskrit and Tamil literature and English literature as well, apart from philosophy and science. And grandmother felt that everything Indian had to be celebrated. So we were all trained in music, we were all trained in theatrical, in recitation, in appreciating multiple languages, and in generally rejoicing in the fact that we are Indian. And I think that really sowed the seeds for all the interests that I developed over the years in culture and in heritage.
Having come into this, on your story about the heritage walks that have become so popular and have only grown in their participants and the vast range of locations, how did you embark on your first heritage walk and what was it about?
See, I must say before the story of how I embarked on heritage walks, I grew up in Calcutta and then in Delhi. And both these cities had and still have a very healthy culture of heritage walks. So I'm talking about Calcutta heritage walks happening from 1989 or so, and Delhi's heritage walks happening even in the early 1980s. And so that is what really enthused me. When I was studying there, I found that I was living in the midst of history and people were there who could tell you these stories. After many years, I came to Chennai. It was only in 1993 that I moved back here. And I began reading what Mr. Muthaya was writing, and I was doing some work on my own in the history of Chennai purely as a passion. And I felt that many of these localities were really crying out for their stories to be told. And I felt that if the average public appreciated what was happening behind those buildings or what had happened in those places, then there would be a greater respect for heritage and for protecting what we have of the past. And that is how I decided that I would do a heritage walk. At that time, Sanjay Subramaniam, the eminent Carnatic vocalist, and I, we were running a website called sangeetam.com. And every week I used to write and put up articles on it. And in 1999, by the time the site had acquired some traction, a lot of the NRIs were coming back for the December music season. And they said they wanted to come and see me. I said, there's no purpose in meeting and just having tea and coffee. On the other hand, why don't we do a heritage walk in the area of Mylapore? because I had heard so much about the musical history of Mylapore, I thought that that would be a good place to do a heritage walk. So Shri S. Rajam, who was a very, very senior musician, who was also a very big part of the All India Radio for several years, he used to live in Nadu Street, and he was a great mentor to me. I can never forget all the people who have been kind to me in my tracing history and doing research. And Shri Rajam was one of them. And it was pouring with rain. I had gone to meet him that afternoon, and then he asked me, and sir, he would always call me sir. I never understood why, but that was his way. And, I think 50 years separated us or whatever. Not 50, maybe 35 or 40 or 50 or whatever. Sir, you're looking very dull today. So I told him I've made a commitment to do a heritage walk next month. I don't know what to do. He said, do you have an umbrella? I said, yes. Come. So we both walked in the pouring rain in Mylapore, and he pointed out, this is where Ambi Dikshita came. This is where Madhura Mani Iyer gave his first performance. This is where Palghat Mani Iyer lived. That was Musri Subramania Iyer's house, and so on. And so within 1 hour, the walk was all planned. And that is how it took place in December of 1999. And after that, we've had several walks.
You just spoke about Calcutta and your time there. What, in your view, sets Chennai really apart from its colonial cousins Bombay and Calcutta?
Chennai is very, very... each city is very different, let me tell you. And my father would always tell me that when you move to a particular city, you must move with the determination that you will like that city. And he used to say, if you go there feeling that you hate it, the city is not going to be kind to you. He would say, develop a liking for wherever you are. And, he used to recite some Sanskrit verse for illustrating that point. And the point is, so Calcutta is all heritage, history, culture. Sadly, there is not much of modern development in Calcutta. Industries are not there anymore. There was a time when it was a vibrant place full of industry, but then, historical circumstances changed it beyond recognition. But it's full of history, heritage, and culture. Bombay, in my opinion, is the only international city of India. It has got a certain cosmopolitan atmosphere to it, which no other city can even dream of ever having. And Bombay is a professional city. Everything they do professionally. And Chennai is a mix of this and that. So there is a very dynamic industrialization in this city. At the same time, there is a lot of respect for heritage and culture. We are very uniquely positioned. Bombay, even in protecting its heritage, has done it in such a professional manner that very few heritage buildings have actually been lost in Bombay. They've been given new life, and they are all income-generating propositions so that they are self-sustaining and this and that. Calcutta, sadly, lot of respect for heritage, but hardly any protection. Things are just allowing to drift. Chennai is somewhere in the middle. It's positioned itself very comfortably, 2 steps forward in modern progress, 1 step backward to make sure that whatever your cultural baggage is traveling along with you and is going ahead. So Chennai is paced itself, is in its own space. It's a good city to be in.
In that genre of narration and lectures that you have widely and extensively delivered over the last so many years, please tell us of those other historians from across timelines who have inspired you.
If you ask me, I must start first by not paying respect to a historian, but to an outstanding musician, Sanjay Subramaniam. Without him, I would have never got into the world of writing. Sanjay and I just met, and he said we have to start this website called sangeetam.com. We became the closest of friends. He encouraged me to write. So before him, I used to write for my own satisfaction, but for the public, no. So it was Sanjay who made that space available for me, and I am eternally grateful for what he did. Thereafter, Mr. S. Muthaiah. Mr. Muthaiah was, even now my voice breaks when I think about him, because for 20 years I had the privilege of being his shadow, working with him. He was everything to me. He was mentor, he was guide. He liked when I wrote, he would read it carefully, he would offer his comments. We would spend hours together on the phone, meeting up. And there was a way in which he encouraged young people, which I think nobody else has ever done. He had no sense of threat from anybody. He operated from such a position of security and knowledge about himself that he encouraged everyone. So Mr. Muthaiya was a great mentor in my life. There have been others, particularly in the world of corporate biographies, which I'm sure you will ask and I will come to later. But through Mr. Muthaiya, I got to understand several historians of the past. So he would always talk about Henry Davison Love and the 3-volume 1913 published Vestiges of Old Madras. Actually 4 volumes, 3 volumes, and a 4th volume is the index to the first 3 volumes. So that, he would say, is really the finest work on the history of the city. It starts in 1639 and ends in 1800. Now, he was not very fond of another book called Madras in the Olden Time by Tallboys Wheeler, but I enjoyed it immensely. Then there was Dodwell, who wrote Nabobs of Madras, which is a hilarious take on history of this city. It's a must for anybody with a sense of humor to read it. And it's also a must in today's generation where everybody takes offense at everything. Being a Britisher, he has poked fun at all the Britishers who lived here. And he's exposed them in tongue-in-cheek fashion. It's one of the best books possible. Then Ashokamitran's Uruparvayil Chennai Nagaram. Ayyo, Uru. In 250 pages, can you put together, not even 250, 100 pages? Locality after locality after locality in his own inimitable style, their description, how they have grown. T Nagar, what is that? T Nagar Andrum Indrum by Nalli Kupusami Chetty. What a delightful biography of just one locality. Small, brief, lovely. So there are very many books. You can keep going back in time this way. And sometimes you read books which are unconnected to the city and then you wish there were books like that here as well. So you have so many.
You just spoke about the late S. Muthaiya. Madras Day has become a byword every year for remembering and recollecting a city's past. And the late S. Muthaiya, who pioneered the cause, was, as you said, well known to you, and you now run the Madras Musings. Can you share some of your pointed memories with him and the beginnings of Madras Musings?
Madras Musings had begun long before I came here. So it started in 1992. Apparently, there was some legislation which allowed printers to import machinery as long as they were willing to publish tabloids. So in those days, you remember, license Raj, so you could not just import anything. Today's world is very different. And so there was this printer who had brought a machine, and Mr. Muthaiya decided that it could be used for bringing out a fortnightly on the city. So he called it Madras Musings. Mr. Muthaiya had retired by the time from TT Maps. He had already become a fairly well-known writer by that time. So he started Madras Musings. He believed that there was a space for a tabloid which will take a serious look at the history and heritage and culture of the city. He would always say it in that sing-song exact tone of voice when you asked him about Madras Musings. And so they thought that they could run it with advertisements and a subscription. So they started it in 1992. It was coming out as a fortnightly, as a tabloid. When I came in 93 to this city, I used to wait for Madras Musings to be delivered. I used to love reading those 8 pages of it, and I used to really envy that, there is people writing for such a wonderful magazine. I never knew that one day I'll become a part of it. And then in 1995, I remember he published a headline saying, Madras Musings has run its course. Has Madras Musings run its course? ? He said there is no money for running this magazine anymore. We've run out of whatever capital we put up, so the next issue will be our last issue. At this time, Mr. N. Shankar, who was the chairman of Sanmar, and he was, at that time, I wouldn't know of it, but he would become another great mentor of mine. So Mr. Shankar called Mr. Muthaiya out of the blue and told him, can you hang on and do 2 more issues, by which time I'll find the solution for you. He was a real financial brain. What he did was he invited 6 corporate houses of the city to come together, contribute money of a certain value every year for the running of Madras Musings. So a corpus was set up. Thereafter, Madras Musings entered into a very successful stint. Now the 6 corporate houses has become 25. So in many ways, it shows you how committed the corporate houses of the city are to protecting the heritage that we have. They value what is being put up. That is how Madras Musings really became financially stable. And none of us takes anything out of it except a very small, minute retainer. And Mr. Mutaya believed that everybody who contributes to musings by way of articles, photographs, they have to be paid. So till date, we always make sure that at the end of the month, everybody who's contributed in the previous month is paid. It may be a very small amount, but we don't believe in taking anything for free. Both Mr. Shankar and Mr. Mutaya were very clear about that. And that is how musings really continues to run.
Another part of your work relates to the continuous writing and offering of additions to the growing corpus of knowledge about Carnatic music, which you just alluded to. What actually made Chennai the capital of Carnatic music, if it were to be?
I sometimes wish that Chennai was not the capital of Carnatic music. I wish Carnatic music was broad-based and was in several places at the same time, in which case it would have a much stronger scope for survival. But you cannot alter history. So Carnatic music, like all classical art forms, depended on courtly patronage, kings, queens, ministers, etc., etc. By the early 17th century, that patronage was beginning to wane because there was a new power, which was the East India Company. And East India Company was headquartered in Madras. Now, this company was not going to sponsor music, but it depended for its own business on a number of people who were known as Dvibhashis, translators, whom we refer to today as Dubash, colloquially. These Dvibhashis were the agents of the East India Company. And they became very rich because neither of the transacting parties would know the language of the other party. And in that difference, they were making their money. So they were practically the de facto zamindars in Madras city. And as you know, any aristocrat needs musicians and dancers in his retinue in order to establish his power. And therefore, musicians and dancers began to be invited to come to this city. That is how they gradually gave up their traditional bastions like Tanjavur, Madurai, Tiruchirappalli, Tirunelveli and other places, and they began to migrate to the city. After the era of the Dubashas was over, you had the professionals. You had the lawyers, the doctors, the corporate executives, the businessmen. They took over from the Dubashas, but they didn't have the financial wherewithal to have musicians in their personal retinue. So they got together and formed sabhas, which became cultural bodies. And these cultural bodies began extending support. And particularly after independence, when that princely establishment vanished completely, there were no kings left, no zamindars left. Where would the musicians go? They had to attach themselves to a city where there was great support and patronage. And that was coming here. Also, you must remember this All India Radio Madras and All India Radio Trichy. These played a very big role in promoting Carnatic music, right from the 1930s till the 1990s when other media began to come and, things really exploded. But All India Radio was your lifeline to classical music. You could stay at home, you could listen to it. Then the Vanuli magazine that would come, which would give you songs with notation. Then you would have classes on the radio. Balamurali Krishna with 2 students singing a song, repeating it 5 times, 6 times so that you could pick up the sangatis yourself. AIR did a great job in disseminating Carnatic music, and that became one of the reasons why this city was very important as well. So these are all the reasons why, one city really becomes the capital at the end of the day.
Another part of your work relates to extensive writing of books, monographs and articles. And for our listeners, I must say that writing, especially of Mr. V.Sriram, is a genre of its own. Not just a mere inscribing of content and context, his capture of facts, figures, and even the most driest of details showcase the artistry of intermixing information and communication in the best combination of engagement and interest across the spectra of listeners and readers. His Chennai Pin Code series was a social media sensation and glued audiences across the world for almost a year. With a rare ability to reinvent and adapt for transforming tastes and occasions, his books, right from the Carnatic Summer being the lives of 20 great exponents, to The India I Saw being his translation of S. Ambujammal's autobiography, very recently, it has spanned contributions that have very few parallels. In those lines, you have done a wide range of work on corporate biographies, be it Rane Madras or Sanmar. What was your first such engagement, and how does one truly understand the essence of any enterprise?
So I started off as a writer on arts. Sanjay Subramaniam, I told you. So music, history of music. Through that, I realized that you couldn't write the history of music without writing the history of the city. I got into the history of the city, Mr. Muttaya and all that. Out of the blue, in 2008, I got a call from Mr. L. Lakshman, the chairman of Rane. And he wanted to see me. So I went and met him. And the first time I was meeting him professionally. I mean, sometimes, in some social gatherings, I may have met him, but we didn't know each other or anything. And then he said that I would like you to write the history of Rane because next year we are completing 75. I was taken aback. I said, sir, I've never done this in the past. I've only done work on music and I've done work on the city. He said, no, I think you have the capability to do it and I think you should. I was still reluctant, and I remember he very clearly explained to me why I was capable. This is somebody else telling me that I was capable of writing. And thereafter, I started working on it. I struggled with it. It took me 1 year to finish that book. And when it was over, and he was signing a document connected with it, he made a remark. He said, you mark my words. You will never be without a book in the pipeline. I never knew what made him say that, but he said it. And there must have been some angel somewhere recording it. And that is how it happened. After that, I have worked with the TVS Group, with Sanmar, with Amalgamations, so many others. And I can't really even think of it. And the learning of city history was enhanced because of that experience of being able to write corporate biographies. Now you ask me, what is it? How do you capture the spirit of an enterprise? You do it by interviewing as many people as possible in the organization. So when I do a book, I normally request them that I want 100 people to be interviewed in the company. And it should span from the tea boy to the union leader to the worker on the shop floor, right up to the chairman. You will get diverse points of view. When you interview women employees, you will get all kinds of interesting factoids that a male-only corporate biography will never tell you. There is a corporate house where first woman employee, as simple as a ladies' toilet was not there in the building. The neighboring building had the ladies' toilet, so she would have to go there to use it. So things like that. So you begin to realize, what is it for women to become employees in an organization which is an all-male setup? The small things that we take for granted is not granted to them. And so you learn slowly from all this. And that is how I think you really capture the spirit of an enterprise. But one thing I must say, the great leaders we have had in this city, great corporate leaders, when you interview them, like the late Mr. V.Sriram, what a pleasure it was to meet him for 1 year every Saturday and just listen to him gently talk about his life, no regrets, how he kept the Amalgamations group growing. What a personality. Mr. Shankar of Chemplast, Mr. Suresh Krishna of Sundaram Fasteners, Mr. T.T. Srinivasa Raghavan and Mr. Vijay of Sundaram Finance. All great personalities. Great. Mr. Lakshman of Rane. I consider it my privilege that I have been able to work with all these captains of industry. Mr. M.V. Subaya of the Murugappa Group, Mr. M.A. Alagappan of the Murugappa Group. Oh, humor, challenges, experiences, you will learn a lot. In my opinion, I came away a better human being after I interacted with all those people.
Connected to the same is about Tamil Nadu as one of India's most industrially advanced states. How did Tamil Nadu, or for that matter Chennai, gain such a reputation, and is there a story behind it?
There is certainly a great story behind Tamil Nadu, and even last week, if you notice, there has been comment about how it is still the best performing state on industrial and economic indices and all that. So there is a great legacy that has carried it forward. This is not something that is achieved in a day or in 10 years or 15 years. So the first thing is, I think, the social revolution in Tamil Nadu began along with the struggle for freedom, which is very unusual. No other region in India, except probably Maharashtra, had this concept of a social revolution and a class struggle happening even as the freedom struggle was in progress. So people were becoming aware of their rights and a sense of equality, and they were challenging established hierarchies. So I think this started very, very early. And one of the reasons for this is the early spread of education. So you had multiple media of education coming into what we today call Tamil Nadu, but was at one time Madras Presidency. And then you had healthcare. See, with a dying population, you cannot achieve any of this. You need a healthy population. I think the healthcare indices were fixed even in the 1930s. Tamil Nadu or Madras had a public health cadre, which no other state was able to replicate. And so, all these things put together created a very robust set of people. Then comes this huge industrial revolution beginning from the 1950s, what I personally always refer to as the Kamraj wave. So, K. Kamraj, Karmaveerar Kamraj as we refer to him, comes along, becomes the chief minister. And for a person who hardly had any education, such vision that he had people along with him whom he encouraged to go forth and industrialize the state. So you had C. Subramaniam, you had R. Venkatraman, you had T. T. Krishnamachari in Delhi, and every industry had a presence in this city. So that is the time when you see the Amalgamations group booming, TVS grooming, Murugappa becoming the first industries of the city were set up by the Murugappa group along with amalgamations. Amalgamations on one side, Murugappa on the other. So what we call Avadi Ambattur, that whole area developed because of what Murugappa did in that area. Now all this comes about because of the encouragement that the government is giving them at that point of time, led by Mr. Kamraj. And I think that established this place as a very serious contender for being in the forefront of industrialization. Then you had this one visionary called Mr. Anantaramakrishnan of amalgamations, who even in 1949 had decided that he was going to make automotive components in this city. At a time when India was not making a single car, he was making automotive components. So he had vision. He knew a time will come when cars will be made. And so the first automotive component company of India, India Piston, starts in this city. And thereafter, you have an engineering revolution coming about because of manufacturing. Ashok Leyland is here. Buses are being made. Now, because of that, automotive components grouping together and all of them coming, and they are all setting up base in this area. Ambattur Industrial Estate, Gindi Industrial Estate, all these things come about. So by the 1970s, along with a lot of labor trouble, which also happened, I think there was a lot of emphasis on engineering and production. Then you have the explosion of engineering colleges. And you have the noon meal scheme, for which also, let's not forget, Kamraj was the pioneer. Then Shri M.G. Ramachandran took it forward and expanded it. Because of that, there was children coming to schools. Education was happening. And then came, when engineering colleges, there was an explosion. You may challenge the quality of the engineering education provided. There is no doubt. That is open to question. But there was a base of engineering and there was a base of engineers in the state. Come 1990s, when liberalization happens, how many places did you have an automotive hub in this country? You had only in 3 places. And you look at the way the companies here breached that quality barrier. They could have easily been wiped out by the multinationals coming here and set up base. But they didn't. They challenged them. The first Deming Prize winners, the first ISO 9000 certification companies, the TQM awardees in India, everything was here. So finally, we are today the largest automotive cluster of India. Among the 3 great clusters, we are the biggest cluster. So there is no looking back on that. That, I think, is very, very important to remember and be thankful about. Healthcare, when it comes to automotive, when it comes to leather, these are all areas in which the monopoly or the primary position of Madras, that is Chennai, is unbeaten.
Your work has also touched upon the stories of institutions, be it banks, schools, and philanthropies. Can you recall your experiences in authoring these books, and how do all of them go on to script their own legacy in heritage?
See, it's a very... many of them may never script their legacy in heritage, because how long will they survive? Some may not survive. Some may vanish over a period of time. So it's at the point of writing, they are doing well and their history has been recorded. What happens afterwards is not in our control. But what is very interesting is that all these organizations have had a visionary. Be it a school, be it a charitable institution, be it a corporate institution, be it a bank, there has been a visionary who's had a dream. Then that visionary implements it for a certain period of time. Now, if this visionary is of the kind where it is only my way or the highway, then the organization doesn't survive beyond that. It dies at a certain point of time. But if this visionary is all encompassing and is a team builder and brings people with whom he is able to grow, then the organization is good enough for a longer period of time. Then the environmental challenges that come. Now, how tough-minded is this visionary or his successors who have come to take over his position? How are they able to meet those challenges? So the typical corporate biography of a company in Chennai will be beginnings either in the immediate aftermath of the Second World War or the aftermath of independence, initial years of struggle, and then establishing a certain survival mode, huge labor challenges in the 70s. So these are all points that you can just go blindly. So when was your big strike? 1973, 1975, 1977, 1979. After that, strikes generally were a thing of the past. Then comes the quality wave. Then comes liberalization and how they survive that. And now comes a question mark wave. What next is a question that many corporate houses are fighting. They have all survived that wave. But beyond this, where do they go next? So this is a question that many of them are asking themselves at this point of time.
It is also extended to schools and other charities about which you have written. So could you also share your experiences in working for some of those subjects?
So, schools, I don't know which charities have I written about. I can't remember myself, but I suppose schools are, socially conscious organizations, not for profit enterprises. And yes, the Worth Trust was written recently. Okay, so sometimes when you have too many children, you forget their names. So it's like that. When you write too many books, you wonder what you're talking about. Anyway, so I just come back to schools. Of course, Vidya Mandir was particularly dear to me because I spent my formative years there. So I wrote their book, and I was also involved, though I didn't write the book of the Shankara education, the Shankara schools, because I'm a board member. I didn't want to write it. Someone else wrote it. But the great joy of writing books like that is to see how many lives were touched and transformed by an educational institution. And the big thing is always interviewing the alumni. And when they come back and they express their gratitude, you realize, something big has happened, and the warmth that they have for teachers. I know of school alumni who've taken care of the medical treatment of old teachers completely at their own expense in some institutions and all that. So I think that has been Worth Trust was a very unique experience. I don't think they would like to call themselves a charity because they started off with giving equal opportunities to leprosy victims in the 1960s when leprosy victims were ostracized. Nobody wanted to see them. They used to be pushed into homes and all that. But here they were trained to operate machinery and accept orders for manufacturing from corporate houses on a commercial basis. And from the surplus that was made, their welfare was being taken care of. Other physically challenged people were being educated. Even today, they believe that they operate on a corporate mode. It's a completely unique model to follow. Usually, when you look at organizations that are doing charitable, very word charity there, social good, they extend their hand in charity because they accept donations and they accept benefactions and then they do whatever they have to do. Whereas in this case, they were wanting to get onto an industrial base. It's like CSR. And then make surplus, and that surplus they were channeling into various... and the way they manage the physical challenge waves. So they started with leprosy. When leprosy was eradicated, they went into polio. When polio was eradicated, they went into visually challenged and orthopedically challenged. When today schools have decided to accept orthopedically challenged, they've gone into intellectual challenges. And they are trying to see how they can accommodate people like that. So it's a great organization.
One of your most interesting books was on the historic residences of Chennai. Could you tell us what led to the book and also share with us if Chennai has its own heritage of housing?
The inspiration for that book was a column every Sunday in the Calcutta Telegraph by an artist called Rathin Mitra. He ran that column for almost 15 years. Every weekend, he would pick up a historical residence of Calcutta, do a sketch of it, and write a 250-word note underneath about who lived there, what is its location, what is its present condition. And my father and I would read it, and sometimes we would even go and see those houses after we had read that column. So many years later, when Mrs. Chandra Shankar of Kalam Kriya approached me and said, I want you to do a book for us, they follow a sketch and text format. All their books are in that format. I said, this is what I want to do. So we selected 50 houses, and I researched it. Mr. Muthaya read everything with a magnifying glass and edited many things out. And then the book came out in its format. So sadly, I think only 10 houses are left out of that 50 today. 40 have vanished. So if you ask me about the story of Madras housing, heritage of Madras housing, I wish we had enough samples to give you a proper story. So there are two, the native housing and the colonial housing is how we really start. Big bungalows by the river, built in neoclassical style, to which Indian aristocrats also move. At the same time, you had the traditional Indian houses, sloping roofs, all joined next to each other, courtyard, plenty of ventilation, well in the background, all that. Then comes the early 1900s when Art Deco seems to capture the imagination of everybody. So you still go to Mandaveli, Raja Annamalapuram, T Nagar and all, you'll find houses with that curving verandas, round windows and all. So cinema theatre style, to put it very colloquially. What we often forget is that from the 1950s, you had a brutalist style also, influenced by Russian architecture. So the CIT colony, the model school, the model housing areas like West CIT Nagar, Ashok Nagar, Anna Nagar, KK Nagar, Shenoy Nagar. These are all places where you have the brutalist architecture influenced by Soviet style. Our dear Music Academy is a classic example of it. And then we lost everything and we became one glass and concrete and no ventilation, artificial lighting, air conditioning. I think we lost the plot at that point and better to stop there, not worry about it.
Madras Rediscovered by the late S. Muthaya has run into several editions. And many people who read that book and your book on Chennai, that Chennai biography, thought that it was almost a sequel to Madras Rediscovered. Do you agree?
I would. I cannot deny it at all because Chief, as I used to call him, was my mentor in every way. But I had my own style of writing, which Chief had encouraged all along. And so I decided that this story has to be told in my own voice. And he and I used to always have one point of difference. I always wrote from an Indian history point of view. He wrote from a British history point of view. And so he was always happy with that. He said, I am a man brought up in colonial times, so I write history from that point of view. So I wanted to focus on drainages. I wanted to focus on Indian housing, Indian politics, post-independence era, cinema, music and all that. So there I think the fundamental differences are there. But then the story is the same. It's the story of Chennai.
2025 marks the 250th birth anniversary of Sri Muthuswami Dikshitar, a composer who edified Carnatic music in theory and its practice, and about whom you contributed a very detailed piece recently. What about this great composer has lived far beyond his life and times?
He seems to speak to the new generation in every way. So, for one, I think there is an almost scientific precision in the approach which he makes to his compositions. There is a structured, thought out. Tyagaraja is all emotion. And he is writing in a language which is not current, Sanskrit. But he is giving you so many layers. There is a historical layer, there is a geographical layer, there is a ritualistic layer, there is a practices layer, like, which temple has a festival at what point of time in the year. You go to his compositions and you have a ready reference. And what I think thrills the current day is that when they go to a temple, They're able to relate to something that they see in a composition of his, which has been written 300 years ago or 250 years ago or whatever it is. So I think that is the genius of this man. I certainly consider him to be one of the greatest minds we have had in the world of Carnatic music.
With that, this brings us to the end of our interview for this English program of All India Radio. Thank you, Mr. V.Sriram, for being with us and sharing your experiences in the world of heritage, history, and Carnatic music. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Amrit, for having interviewed me. It was a great pleasure sharing my experiences.
With that, we come to the end of the interview on the topic Vignettes of Living Heritage. Participating in the interview was historian and columnist Dr. V.Sriram. He was interviewed by Shri AMRITH BHARGAV. This program came to you from the studios of Akashvani, Chennai.